Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Curious Midlife. And today I am really, really happy to have an amazing woman here to join me today, Dr. Nerina Ramlakhan. So, Narina, you do many, many things. And that's what I love because you're multi-passionate and you've lived and done many, many cool things, which each one of them on their own would be reason to talk and discuss. So, things you are known for are as a sleep expert, but you're also a mover, you're a creative, you're a neurophysiologist, you are many things. So hello and welcome. And how do you even describe what you do these days? How do you introduce yourself?
Oh, well, let me just start by saying hello, Julie, and I'm delighted. I feel really privileged that you've invited me to join you on your podcast. So thank you for that. Thank you very much. And how do I describe myself? It's interesting because I'm doing a radio interview tomorrow morning. And they said, okay, how do you want us to describe you? And it doesn't matter what I say, they'll probably still describe me as a psychologist and or something like that. I'll say physiologist or neurophysiologist. But anyway, I get called an author. I'm a physiologist. I'm a sleep expert. And the sleep expert label, that one came about over 15 years ago. I never really set out to become a sleep expert. When I was little, I never said when I grow up I want to be a sleep expert, but I ended up going that way by a series of sort of serendipitous events, very, very unusual events that took place in my life, and in the process solving my own long-standing problems with insomnia, as well as being given the opportunity to help many people, thousands of people around the world, to sleep better. So I suppose that's the easiest way of describing me. I'm a sleep expert, but I also I'm passionate, and thanks to you I now use the word multi-passionate.
Yay!
That, yeah. I'm but I also I'm passionate about helping people to find more balance, to find more energy, to live more joyfully. That's all part of what I do and have been doing for the last 25 years.
I know, and that's what I love about all of it, and why I'm kind of curious to dig a little deeper, because we all know many people who struggle in all of those domains in terms
Mm.
of finding balance, finding joy, and then knowing what to do and how to get unstuck kind of in those things. So I know this past summer there was a heat wave in the UK, and you were on the radio and on TV shows, I believe, and doing all of that. And I heard you on, I think it was the Happiness podcast.
Oh yeah, Action for Happiness. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, Action for Happiness. And some of the strategies you shared on that, I passed on to a few friends of mine who have
Mm.
insomnia and sleep issues, and they were blown away. And these are people like they've been to the sleep labs, they've been and done, the tests. They're women in their early 50s, and they're just like, oh, well, I just get on with it. And, if I get 4 or 5 hours, I think that's great. And well, I'm a bit tired later in the day. And I'm always just
Mm.
like, no, that sucks. That's really shit. And please don't normalize that. Like, it's
Mm.
wonderful that you can push through and you're not, well, you probably are feeling quite insane as a result of it, but you're still high functioning on the surface. And I think a lot of people have set the bar really low in terms of what they've normalized. So what have you seen that,
Mm.
like, in terms of the clients you work with, in terms of the strategies, what have you seen that you would love people to raise the bar a little bit?
Yeah. Um, Gosh, there's so much in there.
Unpack it all. Unpack it.
Well,
Just go for it.
I'll unpack it all. Let me just tell you a bit about a conversation I had with a client today. I'm mentoring this girl. She's lovely. She's 25. She's a single mother. She has her passion project. She's starting up a business on the side while she's actually working the last few days now as management consultancy, because kind of as a result of our work, she's given in her notice. She's going to leave. And it's an interesting thing that happens. There's a kind of magic that takes place. when people start sorting their sleep out. And I often think that in real practical terms, the strategies that I give to people are remarkably and ludicrously simple. They're really simple, okay?
Love it.
But what they do is that they kind of clean up. I call it a clean up act. They clean up our physiology and they
Mm-hmm.
rebalance our physiology so that the pure intelligence of our energy. Now, I'm starting to sound a bit woo woo and esoteric,
Go
but
there.
something magical starts to happen because when we're exhausted, we're settling for 4 or 5 hours. Our true purpose and the courage to follow our true purpose is often masked by fatigue. And we don't have to do jack shit because we're too knackered.
Mm-hmm.
But when we start finding the energy, what will then start to show up is right, I've got this energy, and actually I hate my job, and actually I want to do this thing, but now I've got the energy, I've got no excuse to sit on the sofa and binge watch that box set. I've got to get up off my ass and do that thing. And so what she said to me today was, gosh, yeah, I've got just a couple more days working there. I'm so glad I'm leaving. I have no idea what I'm going into. And here's my son, and I've got no support with my little one. He's younger than 5, but I'm doing this. Hell, I'm doing it. And I said, and tell me about the lupus. And this is one of the reasons why I even after I'd stopped coaching her and being paid to coach her, I said, I'm going to just mentor you. And every now and then we check in. And the reason I'm doing it is because she has lupus, and my sister died of lupus in 2002. And it just touched a chord with me when I worked with her. And yeah, boundaries were crossed. And I just like, no, I just want to help her. But also because I just knew she was young. I could just feel her tired passion. I've
Mm-hmm.
never said that before, but she was exhausted. And her company referred her to me because she was so exhausted. She was making mistakes. But the way they were working her, they were caning her.
Mm-hmm.
And she did not have the confidence to stand up for herself. And her sleep was going and her lupus was getting worse. And today she said, the lupus? What lupus? I haven't had a flare up. My eyes have stopped swelling. I feel like a normal human being again. And I'm just, I'm standing here just thinking, I don't know what the future looks like, but I'm excited. And I said, what about sleep? Oh, what do you mean? Oh, yeah, yeah, no, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sleeping. Sleep was a thing of the past. She doesn't think about her sleep problems, inverted commas, anymore. So there is something that happens when I work with people, and I keep it really simple. And you know what you said about people going and spending thousands of pounds, thousands of dollars on sleep studies, sleep clinics, sleep labs. And then they come to me and I go, well, actually, can you just do X, Y, and Z?
Mm-hmm.
And can you just drop those labels? Drop the label of insomnia, drop the label of X, Y, and Z. Can we just don't completely drop them? Maybe just put them to the side for now and try these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see how you feel and sometimes it's 7 to 10 days.
Wow.
And the difference is incredible,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And maybe I've come up with these strategies because of my own passion to solve my own sleep problems. So when I was 6 months old, my mother was taking me from one doctor to the next because she said, you were so restless. I couldn't sleep. She said she couldn't sleep because I couldn't sleep. And I remember as a child lying there, sucking my thumb and peeling the wallpaper off the walls. And I knew I'd get in trouble, but I had this fascination with making shapes with the wallpaper coming off the walls. I couldn't sleep. And this continued into my early 30s until I kind of exploded, had a breakdown, ended up in a psychiatric clinic where ironically I ended up being headhunted to work for over a decade years later. And that's where my first book emerged from, because I thought, if what I'm recommending to people can help psychiatric patients, we're talking eating disorders, breakdown, chronic fatigue, clinical depression, clinical anxiety, addiction patients. If what I'm saying to everyone out there can help these people with severe sleep problems, I must have something that's worth writing about. So I wrote Tired but Wired and ended up on the couch with Philip Schofield, not on the couch with him, not in that way, but yeah, ended up on breakfast TV with Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby. And then it kind of took off from there. And before I knew it, I was being called a sleep expert. And there were some sleep experts who did not like that.
Oh, well, I'm sure. I'm sure there's certain hats that people wear and they're the expert and that's their domain. And like,
I got
how
trolled. I was like,
dare it?
what? I've made
Who are
it. I've
you?
been told.
We get to
Like,
come along with these simple things that help people, God forbid.
yeah, where's the scientific research for, eating breakfast in the morning? What's that got to do with anything? Like, okay, we're going to have those kinds of conversations. Okay, I
Yeah.
rolled my sleeves up and got going. Yeah.
Amazing. And I was going to ask you about tired and wired, but I want to go
Tired
back.
but wired. Tired
Tired
but
but
wired.
wired. Sorry.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to go back to this phrase you said, which really resonates with me and a lot of people I talk to, is this tired passion. Because,
Yeah.
and I always say to clients I'm working with, change takes energy. It takes more energy to do something differently than to do it in the same way.
Yeah.
And ironically, it's generally because you don't have energy that you're in that position that you want change and your body's requesting change, whether it's mental, physical, emotional pain. And so for people to do it on their own is really, really hard. We have the wonderful internet of information and confusion,
Yes.
which which
Endless choice.
endless rabbit holes to venture down and around in. And yet the bio individuality can't be ignored. And yet there are some things which work for most people most of the time.
Mm.
And so this kind of mix of simplicity and it's like an unrequited love and passion of life. All the people who are just so busy dealing with pain that they'll never get to this kind of, the hierarchy and of self-realization of like, what is this incredible gift you may have, this passion to share. Like, I found the movement coaching and all of that things as someone who kind of just like, oh, I didn't realize I'd lost it. And then wow, I fell
Mm.
back in love with it. And you can do this. And like, oh no, positive aging. And like, wow, you don't have to be that. And you can be this number and this can happen. And that other story, well, I don't know. I never read that book. So I'm not really tied up into that story about that. But these labels, but this tired passion. And it's also like, is it a passion for life that people are just missing out on, as opposed to even direction? Because you've had many passions
Yeah.
and these journeys. So tell me a little bit more, and thank you for sharing about some of both the highs and the lows of your
Yes.
journey
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well. So what do you see? And I love the fact that you're mentoring this woman. Just sounds beautiful as well.
Yeah.
What are the
Yeah.
classic traits that you've seen over the years of
Mm.
people who've normalized poor sleep, and what is not working for them?
Yeah. So I started noticing 20 odd years ago when I started working in a health screening clinic in London Square Mile in the city. I'd left the academic world. I had a number of academic posts, all of which I hated. I'm not an academic,
You me both.
really. I just want to be out there with human beings, talking to human beings, and
Mhm.
not tissue culture plates and pipettes, which is what I was doing. And so I eventually, after a series of a few sort of failed academic posts, I ended up in this health screening clinic, not being paid enough, even though I had a PhD, but I was measuring the health of people in the city. And there I was in this lab measuring, looking at their breathing. And then in those days, we would pinch the fat, the
Oh, the calipers. Yeah, yeah.
the
Hmm.
calipers to measure the suprailiac fat, the subscapular fat. And then in those days, I would call it truncal thickening. I didn't want to tell them they were
Oh,
fat. So I said, you have a degree of truncal thickening,
you're a bit
you
trunky.
know, truncal thickening. And they'd be like, what? This is a banker from Goldman Sachs. What is she saying? Is she saying I'm fat? But anyway, I noticed with all of these corporate employees that they were at this age, they'd be in their 20s, 30s, 40s, but their physiology was behaving in a way that I hadn't anticipated would happen based on my academic
Hmm.
research. The data was skewed. So I started looking at, what's happening in the world? Why are they behaving like this? They were behaving as if they were constantly in a state of running.
Hmm. Hmm.
And they weren't sleeping. Their sympathetic nervous system was in overdrive. Their breathing was all over the place, and we could measure this because we were doing spirometry traces. They were sitting on a bike with a
Hmm.
mask on, and we were measuring VO2 max and things like that. And they weren't behaving the way human beings, the way I had been led to think they should behave.
Hmm.
And I was spending a lot of time talking to them because I'm really curious. And so I was marrying up bits of data. What's happening in the world? What's happening in the world of my client? And what are they telling me about their life? And I was starting to join dots. I didn't realize that this is where my PhD really was useful. You know, you sort
Mm-hmm.
of gathering data. And I realized that the shift in our external world was driving people at a pace that our physiology wasn't adapted to. So the
Mm-hmm.
physiology was reacting. And the most interesting thing I would see is that thin people would turn up and you could tell that they were edgy. I'd take blood from them, as I'm trained as a phlebotomist, spin it down, and then you'd see a layer of fat on the top of that. Sorry, I hope your listeners and viewers are going to be sick at this, but you know, they were producing fat.
Yeah.
Their bodies were chucking out fat because they were armoring themselves. The
Mm-hmm.
body was
Mm-hmm.
intelligently creating a barrier against oxygen-free radicals and stress
Mm-hmm.
by, you know, lining the blood vessels. Cholesterol would be high, internal fat would be high, and they on the external would look like thin people.
Skinny
But all
fat.
of
You
them,
see it
skinny
everywhere.
fat,
Yeah.
skinny fat. And they weren't eating breakfast though. They
Mm-hmm.
were living on caffeine. They
Mm-hmm.
were breathing suboptimally right up in the throat,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So all of this got me really interested. And then I also noticed that, you know, if I asked them, how are you feeling? You know, no, really, how are you feeling? They'd never talk to me. This kind of like buttoned lip, a banker from Merrill's or whatever. They wouldn't talk to me. So
Feelings.
what I would say is, how are you sleeping? And then they would open up because we can all talk about sleep. And in fact, it was a badge of honor that they weren't sleeping or
Right.
that they were working through the night. And so what I noticed was that that started the trend. Stress in the workplace suddenly hit the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
The health and safety executives suddenly started, you know, shrieking about health stress in the workplace. So companies had a duty of care, but people still weren't paying attention to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was bleating on about sleep, but no one was really paying attention to me. And then technology, of course, had landed, you know, the World Wide Web, mobile phones, email. And I noticed that the increase in information processing meant that it was having an impact on people's sleep, this tired but wired. So the default, I got interested in what was happening, default mode network, working memory. Were we working against the limits of capacity of the working memory? And so I started talking to people about the quality of sleep and the fact that they weren't sleeping enough and weren't getting the right type of sleep, the right quality of sleep. And there was this kind of sleep arrogance of, you know, I'll go to bed later and I'll wake up earlier. I don't need sleep kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then all of this basically was fodder for Tired but Wired. And, you know, the stuff I started saying out there into the media.
Yeah.
Um,
And I'm
you
glad you
know,
did.
yeah, then I coined the phrase sleep arrogance, tired but wired. And then I was interviewed for the Independent, um, yeah, probably about 15 years ago, because there was a banker, a young intern from an investment bank. I won't mention the name of the bank, but he worked 3 days in a row and then collapsed in the shower, had an epileptic seizure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they said it was epilepsy. And I said, well, if he had an underlying condition, I'm not surprised. You know, he hadn't slept for 3 days and he hadn't
Mm-hmm.
slept 72 hours. And I called it inhumane. And, you know, that kind of got a headline. And then people got interested in me and what I was saying about sleep.
Good. And I mean, I remember in the 80s and Thatcher and this whole thing of you only need to sleep 4 or 5 hours. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, yeah, and how did that work out for you?
Yeah.
So, you
Well,
know,
exactly. Yeah.
um, so I remember that arrogance around sleep and, well, you sleep when you're dead. That there's stuff to do. And so you do it now. And I think your work has been really ahead of its time. And I think there's a renaissance right now around the understanding of the value of sleep, what happens when we sleep. And I know, Matt Walker's book, Why We Sleep, has been kind of a big phenomena. You've got podcasts like Huberman talking a lot more about sleep and things like that. So, but can you give a kind of brief overview to any listeners here? What happens when we sleep? Why does sleep matter?
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why nature has designed us to spend a third of our lives sleeping. So, you know, there's an intelligence in that design.
Mm-hmm.
And when we sleep, we cycle through various phases. We sleep in roughly 90 to 110 minute cycles. And in those cycles, we travel through layers of light sleep, and then we travel through to slow wave or deep sleep, and then we go into a shorter period of REM sleep or rapid eye movement sleep. And each of these phases serves a different function. And the theory is that with the deep sleep, slow wave sleep, we're really replenishing and restoring the body's vital functions and tissues and organs. And I also delve into a little bit of traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda as well. And I love what the Eastern sciences have to say about sleep and the different slices of sleep repairing different organs. And so if you read any of my books, Fast Asleep, Wide Awake, or The Little Book of Sleep, the two latest sleep books, I talk about the different cycles of sleep and which organ system it repairs. So for example, people who are missing out on their 2 to 4 a.m. sleep, this is heart and lung time and kidney time in Chinese medicine. And so if you're not getting this sleep, when you wake up in the morning, you feel more depressed, you feel more anxious. And I'd see this with psychiatric patients, or the going into lung time. This is when people will wake up and cough around 5 a.m. because that's lung time in Chinese medicine. So the different slices of sleep serve different functions. REM sleep is most commonly when we're known to dream, and we dream for different reasons. We have the dreams where we're packing away the information of the day. So I might dream about you tonight, Julie. You might dream about me. That might be a little bit of a nightmare for you, but anyway, we might
It'll always
dream.
be a pleasure.
So we'll pack away some information, that the stuff that mundane stuff that we might have done during the day. But we also have creative dreams as well, and creative insights. And during the pandemic, a lot of people were having very deep, vivid dreams, very creative dreams, as we all went a bit quieter. And there was less everyday noise in our sleep. It's almost like taking a layer of scum off a bowl of liquid, and then you've got the deeper stuff going on in there. We dream to process our emotional trauma and memories as well. So we have different types of dreams. And some people would think, we also have dreams as premonitions as well. That's a whole other woo-woo subject. So different phases of sleep serving different functions. And when we sleep well, and it's not just about getting 8 hours of sleep. You and I, we love to talk about our 8 or 9 hours. Most people will talk about, a lot of sleep experts will talk about aiming for 7 hours of sleep. I think we need more.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, particularly
Well, I do.
In the noisy world that we're living in, where people don't build enough rest into their days. There's not enough recovery, and we don't spend our days in tune with the cycles of our energy and our ultradian cycle. It places more demand on sleep. So when we're getting good sleep, not just hours of sleep, but the right amount of deep, slow wave sleep and the right amount of REM sleep, we wake up feeling replenished and refreshed on every level. And I think physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And the actress Gwyneth Paltrow talked about clean sleep. Well, for years, I've been talking about sattvic sleep. In Hindi, in Sanskrit, there's a word called sattvic, which means pure. And I think it's pure sleep that we're aiming for, sleep that's unmuddied from the noise of the day or the noise of our lifestyle, including caffeine and sugar and junk food. All of that muddies our sleep. Have I described enough then?
You have. That was great. That was great. And one thing I hear people say that you could answer, or it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on. Some people say like, oh yeah, I don't like it when I sleep too much, though. I wake up feeling really tired if I've had too much sleep. So what's the truth behind this kind of urban myth of oversleeping, or not?
Yeah, well, there is such a thing as sleep inertia, and you ask my 18-year-old teenager how she's feeling. She's, Mom, I'm so tired. Yes, darling, that's because you're constantly sleeping. You're sleeping until midday. Well, and I have to really back down on that. But so if we started paying attention to the hum of our energy, and this is when I start working a little deeper with my clients, maybe it'll happen on the third session. Start paying attention to the hum of your energy. We've cleaned them up with some of my top tips. They start to notice that they have a kind of an optimal time to go to bed, but an optimal time to wake up. And when they sleep past that point, they start to experience a bit of sleep inertia. So as we go past about 5 in the morning, 5 or 6, depending on your cycle, the sleep cycles start to get longer. So it takes longer to complete them. So if you lie in until, I don't know, 9-ish, 10-ish, the chances are you're going to wake up in a shallower stage of your deep sleep, which means you'll carry some lethargy with you into the
Mm-hmm.
day. And you would probably be better off getting up around 6 in the morning
Mm-hmm.
and doing what you love talking about and I love talking about. Wake up, get up, get out, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and I wake up at an earlier time perhaps, but then have a nap in the afternoon, then say I'm going to sleep in.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is such a thing as sleep inertia, that lethargy that you carry into the day.
And a lot of times people will say that they can't sleep because their mind's really busy. And
Mm.
then and this thing I've always said as well, that I'm not alone in saying any of this, is that, if your mind's in a funk, bring in the body to help. If your body's in
Yes.
a funk, bring in the mind. So this duality, this two-way street of mind body that we're constantly navigating and on.
Yeah.
All the time, and tying in the breath work and the breathing to the sleeping. So where has that kind of evolved? How do you see, like, over your career, what have you seen in terms of the changes or awareness, and what would you like to see more of in that?
Yeah. I would like to see people becoming more aware of how important it is to be embodied and
Mm-hmm.
how important that is for sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And that to sleep, we have to be in the body. To
Mm-hmm.
sleep well, you have to be in your body. And, we can use mental strategies to think ourselves back to sleep. And in fact, I teach people strategies, but I love teaching people how to come back into their bodies so they can fall asleep. And, it might be a combination of using a bit of breathing or the I love my left foot meditation. I'm sure you've
Mm-hmm.
heard
I
my,
have, and this is the
yeah,
one that my friends were like, "Oh, I never
yeah.
made it. I never made it beyond the knee. Never
It's
made it
so
beyond the knee. Fell back to sleep.
It's
Like,
so simple. So
phenomenal."
so many people will say to me, I cannot stop thinking. And often people will say it to me as if they are really unusual. Like
Yes,
they cannot, right?
I'm
Well, I'm
special.
sorry.
There's
Yeah,
nothing
you're
you can
not.
say. Yeah.
That's all of us. We're all mentalists. I'm sorry, myself included. Myself included. I had a nap this afternoon. I was so tired at 3 o'clock this afternoon. It's like, I have to have a nap. My entire day was focused on 3 o'clock. I'm lying on my acupressure mat, my bed of nails, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to have a mat. I'm going to have a nap. The bed of nails helps because it's a very somatic experience. I
Mm-hmm.
feel a rush of heat going into my body, but my mind was going at 100 miles an hour from all the
Mm-hmm.
work I'd done in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And so I listened to a hypnotherapy tape to just help me to drop in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I also teach people a technique where it's based on autogenic training. And I'm going to teach it on the radio tomorrow because I'm being interviewed on how to get kids to go to sleep on Christmas Eve. Well, they
Oh,
won't.
wow.
Not the end of the world if they
Let them
don't
be
sleep.
excited, for God's
It-
sake.
I know, let them be excited. Let's not take it so seriously.
Yeah.
But I've asked, can I have time to teach this technique, which I'd love to show you if
Please,
listeners,
please. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
simple. And I've recorded this for Amazon Audible. I describe it in my books as well. Really, really simple. You just lie there. So you get into bed, you realize the Buddhists call it the mad monkey. Your brain is racing, or you wake up in the night and you can't get back to sleep. Don't check the time. That's the first thing. Don't look at the time. Whatever you do, if you have to pee, go and pee. In fact, sometimes I will get up and pee to break the cycle of my mind going, just to give myself something to do. So I use the body. I get up, I move, I go pee, I come back. And then this beautiful little exercise where you close your eyes and you just start with a very silent internal voice. And you start with, I love my left foot. I love my left big toe. I love all the toes of my left foot. I love my left little toe. You can get really detailed. So if you're into anatomy or a podiatrist, you can get really detailed about all those muscles and the fascia and everything going on in your foot. But you basically work your way through your foot. I love my left foot. I love my left ankle. I love my left shin. I love my left calf muscles. And you work your way up. The aim is to work your way up your body to get to the top of your head, back down to end up on your right foot. You will never end up. I mean, it's I don't know anyone who's ever ended up on their right foot, you know. And the trick with this, as soon as you start losing the body part, it might become nonsensical as you drop down from the fully alert state, beta or alpha, into theta delta. It becomes, but as soon as you get to alpha theta, it gets nonsensical. So you'll go from I love my left knee to I love my nose, and you'll go, oh, oh,
Body scan jump.
so body, I was falling asleep there, but now I'm wide awake. No, you go right back to I love my left foot. You start again and you
Ah,
repeat it. And so what starts to happen is that after a while, just saying I love my left foot acts like a switch. And there are times when I wake up and I go, well, yeah, I'm wide awake. I'm really thinking. I'm worrying now. I'm worrying about everything I can worry about in my life. I'm going to worry about it. And that meditation is not going to work for me because I'm a sleep expert. But then as soon as I say I love my left foot,
yeah.
I'm gone. I'm just gone. And it works, you know. So so I'd love to see people becoming more body aware.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're doing some wonderful work with breathing, and I've been on the
Thank you.
receiving end of that wisdom as well. And you know, it's been a game changer. Breathing. I'm going to have to do more breathing through my nose after this interview, of course, because I'm breathing through my mouth a lot at the moment because we're talking. But you know, getting Patrick McEwen's work out there and the
Mm-hmm.
importance of nasal breathing, that's a game changer because people are way behind on this. So
Yeah.
most meditation experts, sleep experts, yoga teachers, there's still a lot of you know, breathing through mouth, pumping breath, forceful breathing going on. There's still a lot of that going on.
And I think it's a really big paradigm shift for them. I recently gave a breathwork kind of workshop to some fellow business coaches who I know, and they're all health and wellness coaches. There were a lot of them do weight loss, metabolism, several yoga teachers in the room. Based on the Bolt score tests and maximum breathlessness tests, there was not one functional breather amongst them.
Yeah.
The whole group were dysfunctional breathers. And there was one lady who she also has panic attacks and agoraphobia. And I mean, obviously the breathing scores were way down. So and these questions come up and they're like, well, what do you mean you shouldn't exhale through your mouth? I always feel very relaxed after that. And what I always say to people, or one thing that I kind of guess, is that anything that takes you from the mind into the body is going to calm you initially.
Yes.
So even if the first breath is like, it's like, oh, you're aware of the breath.
Yeah. Hello, body.
Yeah, like, hello, like, been a while. Hello, how are you? Whereas we're like, zingy, 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 you know, head on a stick kind of thing. But beyond that initial hello body, to really start to share these ideas that, and you know, Patrick has the science there is the peer-reviewed research, there's the calculations you can do of your respiratory rate and your tidal volume to give you your minute volume, the capacity of your lungs. So when I said recently, you know, like if you spend 1 minute taking big breaths, right? I used the word deep breath, which was incorrect because it can be light and deep is what you really want.
Yeah.
But most people who do deep breaths actually do big breaths. So 1 minute of over breathing reduces the blood flow to your brain by 30 to 40%. Now, who ever thought that reduced blood flow to the brain was a good idea? I'm just like, I don't want that. There's a history of dementia on one side of my family. Like, I want my brain health and my mental health to you know, I want to fortify that. I want to offset anything that I perhaps am predisposed to. So what did you see? I'm really curious about your time in the psychiatric ward and the time of you treating people in there.
Not being treated. Yes.
Being treated. No,
Yeah.
that's a different
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
But what you observed with breathing and with sleep and kind of, again, people, and this is, you know, just average population, feeling like, no, that doesn't work for me. No,
Yeah.
that doesn't work for, I hear it from clients a lot. a
Mm.
lot like, no, no, but Julie, you're asking me to do that. That doesn't work for me. And don't tell me what to do. I'm like, oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So it's just an
Yeah.
invitation. And ultimately, we're all in the driving seat of life
Mm.
far more than most people are willing to take responsibility for,
Yeah.
I find. So what did you observe um, in your time working at the ward?
Yeah, so it was 10 years at the Capio Nightingale Clinic in Marylebone, and it was a fascinating experience to go back in there as a practitioner. And then I was amazed at how the issues that I was picking up out there in the world, in the corporate world, with seemingly people,
Mm-hmm.
were very similar to what I was seeing in the psychiatric unit. So every Tuesday morning at 9:30, I ran a patient group where I would have anything between 10 to 30 patients
Mm-hmm.
sitting in a circle around the room with me. And in that room, there could be up to 30 different types of medication being prescribed for various things, most of which would have a sedating effect or were specifically sleeping tablets like Zopiclone, Zolpidem, Quetiapine, Ambien, all that sort of thing. And breathing was very suboptimal. There were groups where I couldn't do breathing because it was terrifying for some of the patients to come into their bodies,
Mm-hmm.
to come into the body. So we would basically just do put your feet on the ground, put your
Mm-hmm.
feet on the ground, feel your feet on the ground, wriggle your toes, feel your feet on the ground. Okay, was that okay? Right. How do you feel about closing your eyes? If you play with closing your eyes, don't want to close it, don't close your eyes. Leave your eyes open. You can choose eyes closed, eyes open. Let's play with both. Let's see the difference. Okay, how do you feel now about noticing your breathing? You know, and then, often it would be okay to do the breathing, but
Mm-hmm.
occasionally you would get a couple of people who just couldn't do it. And I'd be like, that's absolutely fine. You just observe us,
Mm-hmm.
feel your feet, twiddle your pen, doodle on your pad, do whatever you want to do. Do you want to, how do we feel about putting one hand on the chest, one on the belly? So I'd have to slow it right down.
Mm-hmm. I think
And
that's great, though.
yeah, and so what it brought home to me was because I've always been fascinated by breathing myself, and doing all those years at the health screening clinic and measuring people's breathing and looking at their spirometry traces and looking at oxygen saturation and things like that. I was always really fascinated by it, but then this opportunity to get everyone to slow down and for me to then to slow down my teaching and observation and then notice that actually there are so many different stages that one can go through to connect back into the body. But by that same token, and in the opposite way, there are so many stages by which we disconnect from the body over the course of years. We go more into the head, we lose touch with our feet. And I would ask questions like, do you walk along the road and trip over a lot or sprain your ankles a lot? And that would tell me something about their breathing and
Yeah.
whether they're up in their heads, and I didn't realize
Mm-hmm.
I was just catching these bits of data and just making these patterns with people and their behaviors and the way they were. And yeah, so it was a fascinating journey to work in the psychiatric clinic. It was hard work.
Mm-hmm.
I would come away from those Tuesdays just exhausted,
Mm-hmm.
get home at the end of the day like, phew. The emotional labor of going into an environment like that where you have to really be careful about, what you're saying and how you're saying what you're saying. And roughly every once a month, there would be a complaint against, she said
Mm-hmm.
this thing. And,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really offended by what you're like, oh, okay. And
Mm-hmm.
then there would be times where I would turn up and I would go, don't I know you? Oh my God, you're that famous actor. Or you're that person I used to have that crush on when I was a teenager, in that film.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, right, okay. So we're all human beings. We're all on this spectrum. And sleep and breathing, they're great levelers, aren't they? Because we
Oh,
all
I mean,
try,
we're all doing it, or to some
yeah,
degree.
trying to do it, you know.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time dispelling myths, a lot of time dispelling myths, both out there in the world, corporate market, with the supposedly well, and dispelling myths in the psychiatric clinic. Like, people would say to me, I only sleep 4 hours a night. I've only slept 4 hours a night for the last 23 years. I wake up at this time, this time, this time, this time. Insomnia runs in my family and it has done for generations. I already know what kind of client I'm working with.
Yeah.
I know they're obsessively measuring or checking the time during the night.
Mm-hmm.
I know they're anxious about going to bed. I know that sleep's become a nightmare for them. I want to reassure them that it's normal to wake up during the night. I want to reassure them that when you wake up, I want you just to rest. I don't want you to look at the time. Oh, but I need to know the time. They're usually perfectionistic overthinkers, like I was. They probably grind their teeth. They might go to bed wearing a mouth guard because they're constantly thinking
Mm-hmm.
about what next, what next, what next. So you build up these patterns. So I'm slowly de-armoring them. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to wake up during the night. You're normal. We're meant to wake up during the night to check the cave is safe. Just maybe don't look at the time now. Let's stop looking at the time. Let's do that for a week. Let's see what happens. Yes, but I know it'll be that. Yes, I know that you'll know what time it is, but allow yourself to like, oh, I wonder if it was such and
Mm-hmm.
such a time, you know? Let yourself just rest. And you know what? While you're resting, you're sleeping more than you think you are because it's possible to sleep with your eyes open. So
This was
there's
a
a lot.
huge thing when I heard your podcast of you breaking down the different types of sleepers and that the
Yeah,
fact that we can sleep and that a lot of the time people are actually asleep when they don't realize that
yeah,
they think they're awake, but they're actually asleep.
yeah. Last night I was reading a book where they were talking about Wim Hof trekking up Kilimanjaro.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm probably going to have to go back and read that chapter again. I didn't want to put it down because I was loving the story. I was also thinking a lot about the breathing they were doing. That's a whole other conversation we need to have.
Yes. Yes.
But but I know that a lot of that was I was asleep while I was reading. I was in a hypnagogic trance,
Mm-hmm.
and the movement. And that's why reading a book is more powerful than reading on a Kindle or on your phone. The movement of the eyes on the page is very hypnotic. It's very, very hypnotic, as opposed to reading on a screen where we tend to read in a question mark as opposed to a pendulum.
Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, I know there's something about memory and paper,
Yeah,
in the same way that when we write, I mean, there's more movement there than when we type
yeah,
electronically. And then I know my personal preference is like, give me the book, give me
yeah.
the physical thing. There's
Mm,
something about ink on paper or pen versus the Kindle and the screen.
yeah,
And or the phone for me, it's just too small. I like the losing that width of vision, even if
that's
it's a
right.
very small book. I think we've normalized the width of the phone,
Yeah.
and that's a very tunnel kind of vision.
Mm, mm.
Um,
So the movement of the orbicularis oculi and the muscles around the eyes, when you read on a page, on a book, paper book, they move more slowly. It's more hypnotic than when you're
okay,
reading on a phone or on a screen, where we tend to read the first few lines and then speed read down. You see.
interesting.
Yeah, and the theory is that it slows down the default mode network. Once you can start to slow down the workings of the brain, the way we're processing information, and you can tell your brain, oh, it's time to slow down. Then you start to produce that sort of hypnotic, hypnagogic trance, which then
Mm-hmm.
helps you to slide into those early states of sleep.
I love it. And something you said that really that I made a note of is this differentiation between high functioning and
Mm.
well.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm doing a lot in organizations, and I think this is going to be a big part of my work for next year around surviving and thriving.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So my fourth book, the fourth book that I wrote, was a deviation from talking about sleep. I wrote a book about finding inner safety because for decades I've been saying we sleep when we feel safe. We
Mm-hmm.
sleep when we feel safe. And when when we're high functioning, we can get through shit.
Mm-hmm.
We get through stuff. We're on that sympathetic nervous system overdrive adrenaline. And then we come off that when we stop working. We're 24 hours into our holiday. We're just about to go into Christmas. Within the first 24 hours, so many people are going to have a tickle in the throat. within 48 hours, they've got some kind of itis because they've come off the sympathetic nervous system, bash, crash down into the parasympathetic, which has been running on empty. So high functioning is that ability to run in this hyper aroused state. And that becomes, they habituate to that level of, that's the norm. And they fuel it with dopamine and they fuel it with caffeine to keep it going. And they see that as high functioning and they see that as acceptable and normal. And I have to be careful because with my clients, if I'm sitting on a meeting with my clients, I will up regulate myself where I'm breathing like them, I'm talking like them, I'm hyper because I start mirroring them. And then I have to like really come down afterwards and go, right, you need to reset now, you need to rebalance. Now, well is a nice pendulation. It's a healthy pendulation between sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic, sympathetic, parasympathetic. So I know that at the moment, I don't know what my heart rate is. I have something measuring, but I can't see anything. But my heart rate, my heart rate's going to be higher than resting. There's going to be a bit of adrenaline. I like this conversation. I'm feeling engaged and focused. So, but my sympathetic nervous system is more engaged than it will need to be in, say, an hour or 2 hours time or 3. So after this, I'm going to put my Uggs on and I'm going to get out into nature. It's going to be cold. It's dark out there. It might be drizzling. I'm going to take my dog out and she'll be grateful. But I will feel some cold and I'll come back into my body and I'll reset my parasympathetic. But many people never reset. And they say, I'll reset at the end of the day, by which time they're exhausted, but then can't sleep. I'll reset at the weekend. They're catching up on work from the week. I'll reset when I go on holiday, then they're sick. I'll reset when I retire, then they have a heart attack. Sorry, this is really depressing.
No, but it's stuff we see every day. Yeah.
That's the model of the high functioning. Whereas when we are pendulating between sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system is where we thrive, where we feel joy, where we feel playful, we feel creative, we feel mellow, we feel calm, we feel tired, but pleasantly tired. We can feel all of those things, but people don't allow themselves to touch that. And the way the world is at the moment, joy, people are embarrassed to say they feel joyful. And I think we need to start allowing that, which is
Yes.
probably what my next book is going to be about. It's about allowing it.
Yeah.
So that's what I see well as. I see well as when I feel well, I have an ember of joy in me, and it might not be sparky and bright and burning, but it's there. I can feel it. It might be quietly, maybe a little bit tiredly burning, but it's there. I'm well. I'm okay. I need a little more rest, but I'm okay. But people habituate to a level of hyper and exhaustion, and that becomes the norm. And that's how they call that high functioning.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of the people I've worked with and people we know are like they can push through. They're warriors. These are kick-ass people, and they get shit done and they do all of that. But they're so highly stress inoculated that they don't, or they, it's set on mute. They ignore all the early warning signals. Our body's always talking to us all the time. Like I always say, it's sending you 1,000 text messages a day, and you're just deciding to go, no, too busy. Oh, no, blah, blah, blah. Didn't hear a thing. No, everything's fine. Everything's fine. And I always say, well, fine tells me nothing. When I say to someone, oh, I'm fine, fine tells me nothing. It's a kind of meaningless, other than someone saying, oh my God, everything's amazing, or oh my God, everything's awful. Fine doesn't really tell you, because it's all relative, because none of us are in anyone else's body. So my wellness is completely alien to you, but these external measures of it and the simplicity of how's your sleep? How do you feel how do you feel when you wake up in the morning?
Yeah.
Is so keen. I just actually came off a session with a client before this recording, and I was saying, like how you've spent your day is going to determine how you sleep at night. Yeah. How you breathe during the day will determine how you breathe at night. And this kind of connecting the dots for people who have normalized pushing through, who, and the thing is, it's effective to a point. But if you're running that 24/7, it's going to bite you in the ass at some point. And
Yeah.
and for midlife women, when they hit perimenopause and menopause, and then they're like, oh, but I've been so healthy and so this and so that. And it's like, well, have you? And I think the societal norms, especially now with the chronic amounts of obesity, chronic amounts of anxiety, our food supplies are, they're abundant and weak in terms of quality. So there's this poor quality, there's an over quantity, there's this hyperstimulation of information, achievement, stimulus, the badge of honor. How are you? Oh, busy. Oh, great. How are you? Super chill. Like, oh, people don't really know what to say to that. They're like,
I know, this is
oh, I
what
can't
I
really
get.
imagine.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I get. But no, I've got space. I've got
yeah,
space to do it. I've got space to do that. And I'm productive. I'm
yeah.
getting stuff done, but I'm not busy.
And
I,
that,
I, I
yeah.
yeah, I have a practice now, and this is one of the things I really wish people would do more of this, because there's a lot of mindfulness and meditation, and sometimes that's quite a far throw for some people to sit at, and they think, oh, well, I can't sit there cross-legged for 20 minutes or whatever. And my mind is going at 100 miles an hour. But just to build pause into your day, time to pause. I have a favorite chair that I sit in, and my red velvet chair, and I sit there and I have my one cup of tea a day, my favorite Darjeeling and my favorite mug. And I just pause and I just look out, and you know, I daydream, and I look at the
Oh, yeah.
trees and I look at the rain. And that is meditation. That's my contemplation practice. That will affect how I sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get moments to do that during the day, my walk will be pause. That's going to be pause time for me, as well as PAWS time. Sorry. That's very confusing. But yeah, we sleep the way we live. I like saying live well, love well, sleep well.
I like that.
And I often end corporate webinars with that phrase: live well, love well, sleep well.
I love
So
that. And this, the daydreaming. I'm a big daydreamer. And
mm,
I also think it's what saved my eyes over the years as well, as someone who's done a lot of video editing and writing and things like that. Like I'm like the drift.
yes.
And the moments to like stop and cuddle my dog, to
Yeah,
stop and
yeah,
cuddle Pax. Just like
yeah,
three breaths.
yeah, yeah.
Everyone has three breaths.
Everyone, and
Everyone
interestingly,
has three
that's what I recommend to people as a morning practice, is
breaths.
check 3 breaths. That's all I want you to do. Wake up first thing in the morning. Don't get on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I never have my phone in my bedroom. So I have an old-fashioned clock, and I have a landline for the people who are closest to me. If they really need to get me, they know the number for the landline. But my phone is switched off, and it's in another part of the house. And I know I'm sounding really smug, probably, but it's for my own sanity, because I know if I wake up in the middle of the night and
Mm-hmm.
those worry monsters creep up on me, I'll want to go and look at my phone, to distract myself from the worry. So it's switched off, it's charging in another area of the house. And then first thing in the morning, try to give myself 20 minutes, half an hour at least before I switch my phone on. And I notice the compulsion, the impulse, the desire, the longing, the
Mm-hmm.
obsession with wanting to switch my phone on. What's happened? Who will have left a message? And I notice it. And then sometimes I know, and the commitment. And this is how we pendulate and we move from sympathetic back into parasympathetic. Things like pausing, contemplation, being with what's there. Why do I want to check my phone? Why do I want to know? Ah, it's loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
That one. And a lot of people felt loneliness and grief during the pandemic. Those were
Mm-hmm.
huge.
Mm-hmm.
All around the world, people were
Mm-hmm.
feeling that, you know, because we couldn't go out and do the things. We had to sit with loneliness and grief, and it's there for me as well. And so I've become, loneliness for me, I've really befriended loneliness. and grief. I know how it feels in my body. I know the flavor of it in my mind now. And I know that if I take care of it during the day, it won't bite me during the night, because you don't resolve this stuff during the day. It's
Hmm.
there at night, you know, it's
I
there
mean,
at
yeah,
night.
the
Mm,
the unconscious is kind of running the show. The nervous system is running the show. And
yeah.
we think we're all really clever in our conscious decisions, which is always funky. And I
Yeah.
think, likewise, we've walked the path, which is why we do the work that we do
Yeah.
around feeling well, functioning
Mm,
beyond survival,
yeah.
and being curious and not settling for something that feels a bit shit. Really,
Yeah,
in the
that's one of my
biggest
passions.
simplicity. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of my passions is the human condition. And where am I right now, today? What's showing up? That's interesting. That one. Yesterday I was feeling joy. Today I'm feeling grief. That's really interesting. So can I be? And then I'm like excuse the phrase, pig in shit with that. Let's just see what's going on with this
Mhm.
grief. Can I just? And I reckon it takes me now about 7 minutes to work through a wave of grief. I've got to the age where there's been big losses,
Mhm.
but I've got really good at sitting with it and sitting until, if it's a tsunami, most days it's not, but if it's going to be a tsunami, I'm just going to sit with it and
Mhm.
meet it. And sometimes, if I've got a webinar in half an hour, then I can't. I might not be able to. But then can I come back to that tsunami? Because otherwise it's gonna grow and it's gonna grow and it's gonna grow. And so when I've worked with people and I've helped to clean them up, and maybe in 60 seconds I'll tell you the 5 things I tell people I invite them to do to clean up their sleep. But then we work a little bit deeper. And so this girl who I'm mentoring is now she's seeing a psychotherapist, and she's working through her relationship with her mother. She's working through abandonment issues. I'm not working through that with her. That's not my specialism. But she now has the resource to go there and the courage to go there, so that sleep is no longer an issue. Her sympathetic nervous system is healing. Her parasympathetic is working for her. So the lupus is a non-issue. She now has the resource to deal with the big stuff. I love how it all works.
I mean, it's
But
all connected. It's beautiful work. So share the five
okay,
things.
5 things. I call
You
them
know,
my 5 non-negotiables, because these are the 5 things I realized I was recommending to people over and over again. You do these things for 7 to 10 days, it will change your relationship with your energy and your sleep. Number one, eat breakfast within 30 to
yes.
45 minutes of rising. Make it nutrient rich. Include a source of protein. Get fat in there. Don't be afraid of them. Protein, fat, carbohydrate, but eat within 30 to 45 minutes of getting up. And I kid you not, I had one patient at the psychiatric clinic years ago who committed the next day to having a tablespoonful of Rice Krispies. She was in for eating disorders. But after a while, months later, she said, I'm going to start doing that. And then you have to start somewhere. You
Mhm.
start where your client is at, right? But eat. Um, don't use caffeine as a substitute for food. If you're going to have that one cup of tea, like I have, eat first. I have it after my eggs. I have it after my second breakfast. My lovely, and that's my contemplation practice. It's my treat. Don't take it away. So there's don't use caffeine as a substitute for food. Ideally, no caffeine after 2 in the afternoon. Ideally, if you've really got sleep issues, you want to work on cutting out the caffeine completely into weekend. Right. Okay. So that's that one, caffeine. Then we talk about hydration, because often people don't realize that they're overheating at night, they're hot flushes, they're that edgy sleep, as if they're thinking all night, is related to dehydration, and a dehydrated brain that's not detoxifying properly. So aim to be drinking preferably alkalized water, with some minerals, getting some minerals in. Number 4, get to bed earlier, around 4 nights a week, getting into bed around 9:30. Now, this is where I have to train my clients. No, you don't need to be asleep. Around 9:30 and 10ish, you're in bed, you read a book. So they might go off as a result of the session, go to a bookshop, spend an hour researching, browsing, looking at books. What can I read? What's easy? What do I want? What did I read as a child? Do I want to go back to reading Harry Potter? But you want something that you can read at night that makes you feel safe, that helps you to rest, and then helps to create that hypnagogic pre-sleep trance state. So go to bed earlier 4 nights a week, rest and entrainment. Number 5, cultivate a healthier relationship with technology. Ideally, get your phone out of the room. Don't look at your phone last thing. Don't look at your phone first thing. Don't look at your phone during the night. Take breaks from technology during the day. So those are the 5 things that are the cleanup.
Love it. Love it. And it's everything. Like I'm just on board with all of it. It's everything I share as well. And
Yeah.
it's always lovely to speak to experts and you're like, I'm on the right track.
Yeah, relief, kind of like, okay, I can,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's all of that. So I mean, so many amazing things you've shared. And as you were saying, um, this thing of loneliness and connection and refinding joy, and the kind of common thread as well is this embodiment. So being in the body. So you're in your 50s. I can't recall
Yeah,
exactly the number right now.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Do you want me to say I'm 58?
58, yeah. And you've moved your body. You're an
Yeah.
athlete. So can you share a little bit of your movement story as well?
Yeah, yeah. So I went from I was born in England, moved to Guyana, South America, where my forefathers come from. My parents, my grandparents, my great grandparents from India moved to South America as indentured slaves. I'm just taking the time to paint the picture because there was where I started getting active. In England, I was not active. When I got to Guyana, we were in a house with a big yard. It was a messy childhood with my parents and growing up, but I had the solace of trees. My
Mm,
mother's mango trees, the guava trees, the guinep trees, the whatever trees. I'd be up those trees. I'd be covered in insect bites and all kinds of things. I mean, South America, we're talking tropics. We're not talking
mhm,
Caribbean islands,
mhm.
we're talking vicious, ferocious insects. But I'm still
Bites.
up those trees. So I lived there for 7 years. I was climbing everything I could climb. I was stealing bikes whenever I can because my dad was really strict and said that girls don't get on bicycles.
It's an
And
invitation.
yeah. So I was stealing bicycles whenever I could from the boys in the neighborhood and just riding those bikes and ending up in ditches with injuries, but I couldn't get myself off a bike. And then because of all the political problems in Guyana, we got shipped back to England when I was 14, and I went to all girls convent schools, grammar schools, behave yourself schools, and shut down. Became fairly mute, developed a stammer, did no exercise between the age of 14 and 22, smoked, drank a lot, did stuff I
Mhm,
shouldn't have done,
mhm.
eating disorders, nasty, messy, messy stuff. And then it was a relationship breaking up. I'm in hospital getting my stomach pumped out because of some tablets I took because I couldn't deal with it. And I just thought the next when I came out of hospital, I thought I just want to do something different. Walked past a leisure centre, found a swimming pool, couldn't swim, and went in there and took some swimming lessons and just discovered the joy of movement. I was 21.
Mm,
And from that, it led to swimming, led to running, led to being a courier in the city, cycling. At one point, had 3 bikes. Just went back to my love of bikes, and yeah, then started bodybuilding, weight training. At one stage, I was bodybuilding with the guys from Right Said Fred and Richard Fairbros at the dance attic
You're
in
too
Putney.
sexy. You're too sexy.
Yeah, I was in the airport in Piarco Airport in Trinidad one day, and I heard the song "I'm Too Sexy for My Shirt" or whatever. Oh my God, that's Fred. He's gone famous. Yeah, so that it was a whole bodybuilding thing. I was obsessed with getting big and strong and squatting and bench pressing and deadlift. So I started building strength into my 5'1" frame, small Asian frame. Indian women
Mm.
didn't really do what I was doing, but I was obsessed. Always loved dancing, discovered dance in my late 20s before I knew it. I mean, I took any kind of movement and took it to the nth degree. So
Mhm.
before I knew it, I was not just doing salsa, but I was teaching salsa, Latin American in Ronnie Scott's, while having an affair, of course, with the salsa teacher,
Of
because
course.
why not? What a cliche. I'm multi-passionate after all. Anyway, so which then resulted in the first marriage ending. But it's a hilarious but messy story. But then went from my sister died very suddenly, very traumatically in 2002. So instead of grieving, I started training for an Ironman. And so during the pandemic, I had to go back and redo some grief,
Mm-hmm.
that unresolved grief. And I didn't realize I was carrying it until I was in a webinar where there was a grief investigator talking about unresolved grief. And it suddenly, whew, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
that's why. That's why, But exercise was a big thing, did over 45 triathlons, one Ironman, a couple of half Ironmans, 7 marathons. I was running away from life a lot of the time. Now I don't do that extreme stuff, but I've gone back to, and I'm grateful for the stuff I did because there's history and strength in my body. But I've gone back to climbing. I love climbing. I've been climbing for 10
Mm-hmm.
years. Haven't done so much outdoors recently, but that will happen next year. But indoor climbing, during the pandemic, I climbed a lot of trees. I'd find a tree and I'd just have to climb that tree. So I was renowned for just, my dog would be sitting at the bottom of the tree looking at me. Like,
I've seen the pictures.
come down. Are you going to come down from that tree? Jumping in the river, 4 years of jumping in the river, then thinking, do you know what? I'm just going to keep going throughout winter. And I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
keep going with my swimsuit on. And now I have a sort of a tub in my garden where I go in there and I sit, and it froze over last week, and I sit there for 6 minutes and I breathe through my nose, try and
Mm-hmm.
keep it gentle but deep, light and deep, and then I get up and get out and I do some press ups and do some pull ups, and I enjoy being strong at my age,
Mm-hmm.
and I enjoy movement, and I'm grateful to you because you brought some movement back when the grief really hit. It immobilized me during the pandemic, so I suffered some losses, which brought back some unresolved grief, and I got immobilized. And when I met you, you got me moving again and playing. And slowly I started unfurling,
Mm-hmm.
thawing out. And now I'm back and playing again and exploring what I want to do. I still want to climb. I noticed that, experts might say, you can't climb because of this, but actually my body feels best. Experts, inverted commas.
Mm-hmm.
It feels better when I'm moving, and I'm moving in a 360-degree plane, and I'm hanging out with teenage boys, much to my daughter's disgust, in the local playground, hanging upside down, showing them Williams Bell movements, and then falling onto my arse and going, I meant to do that because I end it with a
Mm-hmm.
roll, and then thinking, I think I'm going to have an Epsom salt bath tonight because that's
Mm-hmm.
now a little bit
Style it
achy.
out. Style it out. Walk away.
Sort it
Walk
out,
away.
sort it out,
Yeah.
have a nap, get on the acupressure mat. But I'm playful. I'm endlessly playful, and I twerk. I go on yoga retreats and come back with a twerking related injury in my lower back rather than a yoga related downward dog injury because I just got carried away, There's no alcohol. It's just like a joy of life. I love to move. I love music. And yeah, that's me now. It's a constant exploration of what next.
It is. And it's why, and I didn't invite you on the podcast because we'd worked together and you were a client and you were like a dream client for me because you're curious in the, as you say, like the laboratory of life, and you're invested. You're like, I'm curious and I have a body that wants to move and I want it to be doing this, and I'm, and you're capable and you're strong, and we all have patterns, and to embrace the strong resting, embrace 360 degrees strong, and your awareness of how your nervous system works and what you can do to down regulate, and where we're holding tension and all those things. But the thing I love the most is that you're just you've come through all of these events with this appetite for life and thriving, and you're now moving into this chapter of not just being well or like saying you're well, but like enjoying. And I know, so I wanted you to talk a little bit, if you can, about like where your interests are taking you for this next book and what's happening with that and why, because I feel all the work you've done has been so timely in terms of what we see, and you're reflecting that, and you're hugely empathic, and you're also a very intellectual observer who can then simplify for the rest of us. So you feel it deeply, you understand it deeply, you unpack it, and then you share, which is just, and we need these storytellers, whether it's Chris McDougall going, why does my foot hurt? Or why does my knee hurt? And then, his running journey. And then like, wow, of course, everyone has minimalist shoes. Or whether it's, James Nestor writing Breathe has been like a huge storytelling opener for people to go, oh God, you know what? I do go around with my mouth open. And then going, God, when I look at people who are stressed, yeah, they seem to be breathing a lot and their mouths are open. So I see that you're in this really unique, beautiful space of the science and the story and the compassion and the knowledge, and you're a guide that you share with the rest of us. Like the things you've shared already today about sleep and the nervous system, I know are amazing tools for people. I know from my two friends who are like, the change in their lives of like, oh God, I get more than 4 to 5 hours sleep a night. I'm such a nice person now. And they're nice to themselves. And other
Yeah.
people around them have noticed like, God, you're not so reactive. You don't provoke arguments. You're far more easygoing now. God,
Mm.
you've got energy. You've got energy in the evening to want to do stuff
Yeah.
together. Or some people like some women I know who've sorted their breathing out and their strong resting and therefore their sleep, they now have their libido back. And they're like, my husband thanks you enormously. And I'm like, well, I hope you're both enjoying your time together.
That's a whole other subject. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And it's,
Amazing.
so what are you doing for fun right now? Where is the joy?
Yeah. Oh, what a lovely question. You're amazing. You're asking me some gorgeous questions. So, what am I doing for fun? I'm on a bit of a joy experiment at the moment, an
Nice.
exploration of joy. And I'm looking at how does one nurture joy? How do you allow joy? How do you grow joy? How do you embrace it? When you've been years of conditioning has said you're not allowed to have this, or there are people
Mm-hmm.
around you who are suffering. Can I do this? Can I do this? Can I have joy and grief? Can they exist in the same
Mm-hmm.
sphere? Can they exist in my world together? And so I'm on a whole exploration of joy. What do I love? What do I not love? And so I feel like I'm just like a child right now. So I'm experimenting with things. And, I go down to the dog wakes me up really early because we're experimenting with her food and whatever. And so she gets me up and then I go, oh, I can't be annoyed with you. You're just wonderful. You want me to get up and go out. So we go down to the river. Then I'm at the side of the river and I'm thinking, I actually want to move right now. But I've got all these winter clothes on. This is so annoying. What can I do? Let me just try some qigong movements. I'm playing with my qigong and I'm doing it all wrong. And I'm remembering that my Tai Chi teacher says, get it wrong, make it up. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, yeah, she said you're allowed to make it up. So I'm going to make it up. So I'm really having fun with making up movement and pretending to be a Tai Chi master. So I'm really loving doing that. I've taken up some singing and I'm singing a lot. And I think probably really I was told I'm a mezzo soprano, and she shouldn't have said that to me because it's gone right to my head. And I'm walking my dog. I've got headphones on. I'm singing along to me, forgetting that people can hear me. So I'm singing. I'm singing a lot. I'm dancing. Um, I I'm reading. Oh, I'm passionate about books.
Mm-hmm.
I read, and not just educational, informative books. I read a lot of fiction. I read beautiful books. I
Mm-hmm.
read books that are so beautifully written, but that they make me ache. And I have a
Mm.
pile of books that I've read halfway through because I can't read them because I would get so triggered that I'd be weeping. It's like, oh my God, yes, I'll have to come back. And then I gather myself up. And today I've decided that there's one book that I can go back to, which is about a Cherokee Indian woman of Cherokee Indian lineage and the history of abuse and that runs through the family, but it's so beautifully. And she turns to writing. And that gives me joy to read beautifully written sentences, lyrical language. And it helps me to write because I'm working on my fifth book, but I actually secretly don't think I'm a very good writer. But anyway, that's a whole other subject. I'm working on that one.
Mm.
But I do things like that, and then I'm experimenting with relationships and friendships. and noticing what fills me up, what nourishes me, and what depletes me. And I do feel very deeply. And I'm noticing that out of loyalty, I can spend time with friends that deplete me actually, and I'm exhausted afterwards. And actually, a kindness is to cancel social. So I've cancelled the plan for this evening, and I would prefer to walk down to the river with my dog and do some wafty stuff. And
Mhm.
then, so that brings me joy to notice that actually there are friendships that deeply nourish me and fill me up and top me up so that I could go climbing perhaps tomorrow morning. But if I did see this other friend, maybe I couldn't. So I'm experimenting with friendship in a way I've never done before. And that might sound a bit ruthless, but I was listening to a lovely podcast the other day with Reese Witherspoon, and she was being interviewed by Glennon Doyle, the We Can Do Hard Things podcast, and her take on friendships. I loved it, and I thought, yes. And occasionally, I have a couple of friends who I could talk to for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and that's a long conversation for me.
Mhm.
And we talk about consciousness and metaphysics, and we'll talk about etheric planes. And what does it mean to spread your wings? Do you think we really have got the beginning, those cells at the back that meant we once could fly or we could one day fly? We have these crazy conversations. That brings me joy. Crazy conversations with the right kind of people.
I mean,
Time
it's
with
all, yeah, it sounds wonderful. It sounds, you've given yourself permission to play.
yeah.
You're experimenting with boundaries, like beyond and breaking free of the kind of socialized norms or the socialization that we've kind of been grown up with. And like I say no to things all the time.
Mm.
Like my close friends know that, like, for me to do anything in the evening, it's like, if you're asking me to go out and like not be in bed by 9:30,
Yeah.
it's got to be good. It's got to be worth. And I will say yes to all the things that I know are passionate and bring me drive and energy and fill my cup, and that also that I will bring good energy to, that I will contribute to. If
Mm.
me going somewhere is going to like deplete me and others, and you have to look at, well, am I just adhering to a norm, or
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
where is the value? Where is the
Yeah.
value in this for me? Where is the value in this for others? And how does this deplete or re-engage from a higher purpose, from the things I'm passionate about in my life? Or is it just being seen to be seen? Is it I tick the box so they turned up, but like I would never miss someone's wedding, or I would never miss, I was I live in a host country, and I was invited to, for the second year now, my wonderful friend Rhonda, her family's kind of Christmas gathering,
Mm.
and to be welcomed into that inner circle. And it's not a kind of like charity, oh, Jeannie's on their own.
Yeah.
Like, so this was last weekend. It's not like, no, this is what we do on the 25th of December. And it's an honor, and I love it, and I love getting the presents ready for the Secret Santa and this, and enjoying the meal and being there. And like, I got home at 1 a.m. and it was
Yeah.
like, that's wild for me. And when I go on girls' weekends, like, everyone knows, like, most of them, the others, they go to bed normally around 11 o'clock. Like, and they know, like, if I'm still up at 10 and we're there, like, this means something. This is really a meaningful effort on my part, because I don't go and wake them up at 6 when I get up,
Yeah.
but I will still wake up at 6, and then I
Yes.
still
Same.
day and have my energy and my thoughts and my clarity. So I think having these boundaries, and I think as we age and when we're in midlife, it's such a beautiful time for reflection.
Yeah.
If you're not too tired to have passion, it really kind of comes full circle, because you're never, to find joy, you need to be well and be prepared to step into high functioning wellness, high functioning play, high functioning joy. And I think after the pandemic, people are still carrying so much trauma, through,
Yeah.
depending on where they were in the world, the circumstances they were under. I know like the lockdowns in the UK were brutal, and some people may say, well, that wasn't really brutal. Look at so and so, and it's all relative. But for the people I know in the UK, it was, and I wasn't there. I think it was really harsh, and I think coming out of it in this kind of year ahead, a lot of people. I had a wonderful message from a friend, Layla, who we both know, who's an artist.
Yes.
She was also a former client of mine, and she has her wanderlust back. She has the travel bug back, and it's like, yes,
Yeah.
because we all got muted. Life got smaller and shut down,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
went in, and then like, okay, you stayed there, and for some people, like amazing things happened. This slowing down. I had friends who were like, oh, I don't want to admit it, but I don't really want it to open.
Yeah.
Because they were
Yeah.
like, I've had the most incredible time with my kids. I wouldn't
Yeah.
have seen them otherwise. And yet it's all a balance. It's all, none of this is black
It's a
and white.
balance. It
It's,
is. And
yeah.
it's like, well, I want to spread my wings now. I have this feeling
Mm-hmm.
of wanting to spread my wings, but I don't entirely know what that looks like yet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it looks like yet. And will it mean travel? I don't know. I have my pup, but I've become very almost a little institutionalized at the moment with the comfy evenings with the dog and the cat, and I adore them.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a restlessness that's stirring in me, and I'm not quite sure where that wants to go. And so I'm just being curious about it and
Lovely.
just letting it unfurl
Mm-hmm.
and seeing where that's going to take me. And I've been invited to do some interesting things next year, to travel to some places. And I've said, yeah, maybe. I don't know yet. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I'm not going to go back to doing what I did before the pandemic. That's not me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I might do a version of it.
Mm-hmm.
I might do a version of it, but I just don't know yet. And so I have a friend who's saying, have you signed up to go to Latitude Festival or whatever, Wildwood Festival? And I don't know. That's in June. I have
Mm-hmm.
no idea. I don't know what I'm doing next week,
Mm-hmm.
much less,
Yeah.
in June. I do know that the work that I want to do, there are elements of it. I love my work. I'm passionate about my work. I love standing on a stage and doing what I do. I don't know what happens when I get on the stage. I gave a presentation a month ago at one of the top 6 management consultancies, about 800 people. I got on the stage, I opened my mouth, something happened. I came away. I thought they were smiling a lot. There were a lot of people talking afterwards, but are they going to complain? Well, they booked me again for March. So I think it was okay. But it's almost like, something is happening, and I don't always know where the joy wants to go. And I just have to allow it, just look after
Mm-hmm.
myself to the best of my ability, and then show up and let it happen.
I think I love that. And I think it's about creating space and energy, because without those two elements, that
Yeah.
creative flow, that intellect, the action that follows, it gets roadblocked.
Mm.
So the energy and the space and that, the to be able to buffer the stresses that are going to come. There's always going to be stress. There's always going to be like this, the curveball or the thing or the event. Like, we're never on, I've got it nailed, I've got it dialed in, and it's going to stay like that. It's just like, no, that's not life. Like, that's so to be, and I love just to say, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, when I remember coming to the end of my PhD, and the writing up bit was really hard for me. I'm not an academic writer, and it was just like, God, this is monastic and lonely, and it hurts my brain. When will this ever stop? And you go through that roller coaster. It's kind of like finishing a book where you're like, this is amazing. Okay, and then next day you're like, I might as well just burn this. This is like, no, this is what I'm so stupid. What was I thinking? This is nonsense. This is indulgent shit. And then you're like, no, there's good stuff here. No, okay, just need to push through this, and maybe tomorrow I'll have a shower. And you're kind of,
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
this deep kind of push it section. And but then so finishing the PhD, and people are like, oh, so what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I was just like, I don't know, but I want something really nice to happen. And that was all I could say. I was like, I was just inviting in niceness, a
Yeah.
feeling of nice. And nice may sound overly simplistic and juvenile, but it meant ease. It meant connection. It meant warmth. It meant play. It meant, what had I been deprived of whilst I was like down this rabbit hole? And to know, what's the way out and what you're going to be open to. So I think to have this, it's really a test of, well, are you curious? Because you're just curious to find out, and you're not tied to any particular outcome. And you're, more specifically, you're not tied to the route that's going to get you to what you currently think is the outcome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And and I have a few non-negotiables, like I will get my sleep. I will do my best with my nutrition. I will eat my breakfast. I will up my protein intake. I will drink the water. I'll do the things that I can do, and then hope that the energy just takes me where it needs to take me. And it's almost like I see myself as this kind of attractor field. And the more I can kind of grow the energy of this attractor field, the more it's going to bring in the things that I want, which sounds very new agey and woo-woo, but that's the way it's worked for 20 odd years with me. And my energy is just keep working on this. And this is my best business plan. This, working on this. But working on this, it continually morphs and changes, particularly with perimenopause and menopause, and even every day, because tiredness can mean different things. Tiredness can mean, I want more intellectual stimulation. I want to play more. It might not mean you need more sleep. So I'm always inviting people to get underneath the tiredness. What is your tiredness? Really, it's not, often it's not about sleep.
I mean, I love it. If my body's physically tired, it means my energy is really good and calm for doing the intellectual work. If there's like writing and reading I need to sit down and do.
Yeah.
And I'm blessed in Southern California with, everyday sunshine.
Yeah.
So my instinct is like, oh, go outside, go play, like, oh. And like, Pax is happy to do 5 walks a day. We do 3 minimum. Sometimes it's more. Yeah. So, but when it's like, oh no, I want to get that thing done and I want to create that thing and do that. But if I have too much energy, then it's very difficult for me to anchor myself in that work. So when I have a physical tiredness, it's like, oh, okay. Now I'm like, that invites this rhythm for these tasks. So, a physically tired body is not a bad thing. It's like, oh, cool. Now I can get this done. That's great. So, I mean, I just love what you do. I love what you share with the world. And I'm so happy that we've been able to,
it's been
to spend time and get to know and share. And so is there anything else? What are your kind of final, I don't know, thoughts, messages? Where can people find you? All of that good stuff.
So I do the usual social media channels. There's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, at Dr. Narina, at Dr. Narina. There's a website, drnarina.com, but maybe that'll be in your show notes anyway.
Yes, sure.
And I would just say to people, just value yourself enough to value your sleep. Value yourself enough to give yourself the gift of good sleep and good energy, because that's where the real healing then starts to take place. I think we can only heal when we have a surplus of resources. And when we're looking after our energy and looking after our sleep, we start to find we have a surplus of resources. And that then takes us into the courageous work of doing the healing, which then takes us into the thriving and the joy and whatever else, whatever your version of it. And it doesn't have to be loud, rah joy. It could be a quietly burning ember of just good in my skin joy. But I really believe that, and there are many different routes into getting to that place of having more resources, and the work that you do is amazing. I know you work with sleep as well, but the movement and the movement snacks, all of that. But I do find what I love with the work I do and the simplicity of it is just the magic that takes place when people, and I very rarely see anyone for more than 3 sessions.
Amazing.
Sometimes it's 1 session, then check in on WhatsApp, tell me how you're doing, and then don't waste your money.
Beautiful.
So I have no interest in seeing people for more than 3 sessions. If they need more than 3 sessions with me, I'm not doing my job. I'm not the right person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They need
It's
something else.
It's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your
Thank
time
you.
today. And
Thanks
yeah,
for
there's going to be show notes and links. And I just encourage everyone who's listening to follow Narina and to be inspired and informed, because you're an inspiration for me for positive aging as well.
Thank you.
So I love it. And I'm excited for your next book. And everyone should go out and get your previous books as well, because
Yeah. They're all
it's
on Amazon and
incredible.
the usual places. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, Julie. It's been such a joy to chat to you. It really has. It's got me focusing on next year now. What will it mean to spread my wings?
it's always just watch this space. We'll find out. I don't
Yeah.
know. Let's find out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the show. Remember to subscribe and leave a review, and let me know what resonated, what you liked, what it brought up, what you're curious about, and what you would like to hear. You can go to julieangel.com and you will find a bunch of great free resources there. There is the free Movement course, your free Movement Snacks guide, and if you are interested in reclaiming and increasing your physical strength and confidence so you can get your mojo back, be brave, adventurous, and age with grace, then message me via social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, or through my website, or email me at drjulieangel@gmail.com. That's drjulieangel@gmail.com, and let's set up a call. And until the next time, enjoy, stay curious, and I'm glad you enjoyed the show.